tick-borne diseases and prevention strategies. If anybody has any issues hearing audio on this, please just put in the chat and we'll try to adjust. And so I welcome you all. Larry Dapsis, who presented for us in person a couple of years ago, had a last-minute conflict, but we are so pleased tonight that his counterpart from Plymouth County, Blake Dinius, is with us, and he stepped up in his place. So Blake is here. Maybe Blake, if you want to reveal yourself here while I do a little embarrassing introduction of you. Blake graduated with a degree in biology from the University of Massachusetts, Boston. And soon after, he began his career in insect research. After over 7 years with hundreds of studies under his belt, Blake began working for Plymouth County Extension as the entomologist educator. And currently, Blake's focus is on vector-borne disease prevention. So he says the key is awareness and not fear. As an avid angler, camper, and hiker, he believes New Englanders should enjoy the outdoors. And so with the right knowledge and tools, all vector-borne diseases are preventable. And that's what he's going to talk about tonight and give us some very valuable information. So just a couple housekeeping tips before we get started, and welcome, Blake. Thank you for joining us. The Zoom is being recorded tonight. And if you could, just keep your
recording
sound muted.
In progress.
Keep yourselves muted throughout tonight's session. Questions can be submitted via the chat, your chat function. So if you don't mind, just type in your question, and Jess Pfefferman will consolidate the questions and ask them to Blake at the end. And any questions we don't get to tonight, however, we will follow up offline and get you the answers to your important questions. So as a reminder, Winchester has a very generous, we have benefited from generous funding from Winchester Hospital over the years, and tonight is no exception. And also, just as a reminder, if you do find a tick out there that is on you and you want to know if that tick is carrying pathogens that cause tick-borne diseases, for example, of Lyme disease, you can actually have that tick submitted at a reduced rate through our subsidized program, thanks to Winchester Hospital. And so more details can be found on our website, winchester.us/ticks. So please remember that throughout the tick season that you can submit a tick that has actually, that you found. So thank you again for being here, Blake, and now I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, and we'll go ahead and get started. There's a lot of information to cover, and I hope I address a lot of different concerns, but you know, I could go on and talk about ticks all night long and probably put you all to sleep, but we're going to talk about the basics and kind of the most important stuff in this presentation. But there's a lot of really interesting stuff to talk about ticks with. So let's go ahead and get started. As we kind of went over, this is me. This is me at the top of Mount Washington, and I promise you, I did not drive my car all the way up there and get out and quickly snap a picture. I hiked all the way up. I really like showing this picture because it does remind me of the kind of pre-COVID times, but also to really show you that I really like getting out there. I do not let ticks prevent me from doing anything that I love doing. And I've given this presentation now for a number of times, for about 4 or 5 years now, and I'm confronted with a couple people who don't care about ticks at all and kind of succumb to these tick-borne diseases, and people that are so afraid that they lock themselves indoors. And I'm here to tell you that there's a spot that's in between, a spot that you can be aware and you can recognize that they're out there, and you can still do everything that you love to do. And I'm really trying to get you to that point. And hopefully I succeed in getting at least a few of you to that point. And if not, just let me know. Let me know what worked and let me know what didn't work. Before this is some of the research. I like to show some of the research I used to do. I worked primarily with honeybees. I did do some work with ladybugs and lacewings, some work with springtails and earthworms, which are not really technically insects, but they're invertebrates. This is what a baby honeybee looks like. If people never knew what a baby honeybee looked like, they look a little bit ugly. They look kind of like a grub. But I took a lot of pride in rearing these out. We would graft them at one of the earliest stages of their life, and I'd hand feed them every single day until around day 8, where we transfer them, and I'd roll them in a special sterilized tissue paper, and I'd transfer them, and I'd let them pupate and become adults. And it was really a very rewarding experience, and it is definitely an aspect that I miss, because currently I'm just primarily involved in education. I do a lot of different programs, anything from these Zoom type webinars that you get online to in-person workshops, butterfly walks. I go over and advise people on gardening, workshops for kids, which are just primarily hands-on activities. You name it. It could be anything from, even advising people on house pests for boards of health that might be dealing with, say, a bed bug infestation or termites or something like that. But you can really just think of me as a giant bug nerd. I've been a bug nerd my entire life, and it's just something that is really called out to me, and so something that I just am very passionate about. So let's talk about the story here. Why are ticks a problem? What is the deal with ticks? And I'm guessing that you all have shown up tonight because you're concerned about ticks already. You already kind of know the problem. For one, they're gross. No one wants this to happen. But really, the problem is what comes with that tick. What are the diseases that reside within that tick? And there are 10 different diseases that we know about here in Massachusetts. They're not all occurring at the same rates. Lyme disease is by far the most common out of all these. And if you look at the color coding that I've kind of put up in this pie chart, you can see that there's a distribution behind the different types of diseases associated with different ticks. And this one Powassan virus at the top, yeah, sure, we've kind of recognized now that all 3 ticks might be able to transmit it, but it still seems primarily associated with the deer tick. And again, Lyme disease is by far the most common. There's almost 500,000 cases of Lyme disease every single year. And 95% of these cases are concentrated in just 13 states, Massachusetts being one of them. I know according to this map, it looks like Massachusetts has 0 cases. And I'd like to believe that it's because of me, but I know that I'm not St. Patrick chasing out the snakes. It has everything to do with the way we've begun collecting data in 2019. And the state has essentially decided that it's not worth their time and the resources just getting another year's worth of data about how bad it is here in Massachusetts. The long story short is that it's bad here in Massachusetts. It's going to be bad. We don't have good years and bad years here in Massachusetts. Every year is a tick year. And that economic burden of Lyme is estimated about $3,000 per year per patient, or per patient per year rather. And that's significant. That's a good amount. But wait, there's more. There's this new kind of syndrome. It's really a syndrome, not an allergy. It's called alpha-gal syndrome. And you might have heard it in the news referred to as the red meat allergy. So this is not a female superhero. This would be the allergy that what a lot of newspapers are calling red meat, but it's beyond that. It extends to things like Jell-O and gummy bears and the candy-coated shell on an M&M. Anything that is a mammalian product, anything that is basically does not come from a primate that is also a mammal. And the real insidious thing about this allergy is we don't know really what causes it. We don't know how it goes away. And it could be up to 8 hours after you eat those steak tips this summer that you succumb to these allergic symptoms. So it's not an immediate response. And that's what's kind of wild about it. There's still a lot unknown about this particular allergy. And all of that caused by a tick bite. That's kind of crazy. So no one wants to end up with their lives like this. Again, if the Lyme disease doesn't scare you, hopefully the lack of red meat will kind of put this on your radar. But we've got more. We've got new ticks that could be invading our home turf. This Asian longhorned tick was discovered in 2017 in New Jersey on a sheep, and it reproduces asexually. That's right. These ticks don't even need to mate in order to reproduce. They do it all on their own. And so this tick is spreading rapidly. And you can see where it was discovered in 2017, just covering the ear of this poor sheep. And yeah, since its discovery in 2017, you can see where it has been in 2021. And Rhode Island was one of the most recent findings of this Asian longhorn tick. So this thing's moving fast. This thing will be here on your doorstep before you know it. The good news about this particular tick, if there is any good news about it, is that it hasn't been associated with a human illness yet. So even though it's around here and in its current range, it's been associated with disease, at least here in the United States, no, it's been kind of disease-free. It's not really been able to transmit any diseases to humans as of yet. So that is kind of good to know. But there's potential new pathogens too, new diseases. There's this disease called Heartland virus. And if you look at the map put up by the CDC, you can see that this is where they think it is. This is the distribution of where the CDC thinks it is. This is the distribution of where researchers think it is, right? It's different. It's different than what the CDC thinks. And is it here in Massachusetts? We're not really sure. It's one of those things like the more you look, the more you find. There could be other pathogens, more than those 10 pathogens that we went over, lurking here in Massachusetts. And we learned that just recently in New York. And this is a snapshot of Long Island. In 2018, Heartland virus was detected in a Lone Star tick that was removed from a resident. And the way it was detected, and I know that Jennifer just went over this, is this resident had that tick tested. Without tick testing, we never would have known. And we would have had no idea. We would have just assumed it was the same distribution as before, and as before that, and as before that. This tick testing really put this on our radar. And that is, I think, the true value of the tick testing. But after that was detected in that tick, and that person showed some, symptoms in the seroconversion, right? The state launched a tick surveillance program, and they collected deer blood, and they tested that, and they found that this virus is more widespread than they even could have possibly imagined. And so this study was published in 2021, and they found that it was all over Long Island. I just listened to the researchers talk about some of their newer data that hasn't been published yet. So you guys are kind of getting this stuff hot off the press. They found that it's pretty much all over New York, particularly in the southern and eastern portions of New York. So it is much further widespread than we could have imagined. And they mentioned, do they think it stops at the border of New York and in Vermont, in Massachusetts? They said they're not sure. They don't know. So it's possible that this virus could be here in Massachusetts, and we just don't know it because no one's looking. So let's talk about, we kind of got done with the scary part, and this is the part of the presentation where I hopefully am going to give you some hope and tactics and arm you with defenses that you guys can put into practice. So you guys can sit around and wait. And some of the people, they ask me the question and they say, what are they going to do about it? And they is always someone that's not them, right? It's always the government or the scientists or the doctors. And they're kind of shirking this own personal responsibility. But I'm not that kind of guy. If I have tools readily available for me, I'm not going to sit around and wait and ruin you only get one life, right? Why sit around and not enjoy it to its maximum capacity? This is me. I'm out at the Deerfield River in Massachusetts, and I had a great time fly fishing that day. I had an awesome time. But if you look around me, that is tick city. There are I had to get through a lot of tick habitat. And, I walked home that day with a new record for trout, and I didn't have a single tick on me. And that was awesome. I catch more fish than my friends, and I never get bit. That's a good life. I even conduct tick surveillance around the county. This is me with a whole pile of ticks, right? I drag my flag through the woods. I am purposely walking through tick habitat. Again, I never get bit. And to this day, I am Lyme disease free. I've never had it in my entire life. I get tested every single year. I go through my doctor and I ask them, I say, I want to get tested for all these tick-borne diseases because I need to know, right? And it's always negative. And, the other point I want to bring up is I'm probably the least lucky person you'll ever meet. I am not a lucky person. People give me scratch tickets. I scratch them off. I never win. Never won the lottery. I went to Las Vegas once. I lost all my money. I'm just not a lucky guy. I bet on teams. I could bet on Tom Brady and he would lose that game. That's how unlucky I am. But I am a scientist and I do trust science. And it's this science that has kept me safe all these years. And so this is what I think is pretty basic, but I do want to start with this, right? Understanding ticks equals prevention and misunderstanding equals risk. And it's so basic, but there's so much misinformation floating around on the internet. How do you know what the misunderstanding is? And I think that's a great question, right? And that's a question we all need to ask ourselves. How can we tell? So what I'm going to ask you guys to do right now is to take everything that you guys think you know about ticks right now and throw that out. Let's start fresh with a clean slate, because everything in this presentation is backed up by hard data, and it's data that you can rely on. And so that's the important part. So everything that you thought you knew, just question it, throw it out, question it, assume that it's not important. And then starting right now, we're going to start fresh. We're going to have a clean slate because this is the stuff that's going to keep you safe. You don't need to know the other stuff. So let's start with the basics of tick biology. They don't jump, they don't fly. This comes up all the time. People think that they jump and they fly. They just don't have the machinery to do that. And they rely very, very heavily on scent, the way that you smell. So with the behavior of the tick is to essentially stay down towards the ground and only come up when they smell us coming, right? They've got this excellent claw for latching on. So again, they don't need to jump on you. They simply just latch on to you almost as if you were walking through the woods and Velcro became attached to you. And this is good. It was designed for latching on a fur, but it's great for latching on a clothing and skin and pretty much anything. So this is a rubber boot. And a lot of times people say, wear rubber boots, they'll keep you safe. That's a deer tick climbing a rubber boot. If you think you're going to be safe wearing rubber boots, I've got news for you. And so all of this leads to this, and this is the moment that we're trying to avoid, right? 70% of cases of Lyme we think occur in people's own backyards, and we think that these are associated with animals. A lot of times people blame deer, but it's more than just deer. Again, it's 150 species of animal. These small rodents, and about 82 species of birds. So robins, varied grackle, all these different things, essentially, basically backyard animals. And what you have going on in your backyard is essentially a tick buffet. Ticks are basically soil-dwelling organisms. The biggest threat to a tick in the environment is going to be lack of humidity. It's going to be drying out. So they're very, very closely associated with areas that are moist and damp and humid and shaded. Again, one of the reasons why they're closely associated with these forest edges, because they've got a lot of leaf litter, they've got a lot of shade. We know from tick collection that only about 6% are active at any given moment. So that means most of them are really just huddled up underneath all this leaf litter, close to the ground, maybe under log piles and rock walls, and just absorbing humidity from the air. They're very closely associated with the edge. The edge of these habitats, about 82% are found less than 10 feet from the forest edge. But you do find, about 20%-ish further out. I'm not sure if they'll survive very long out there, but it can happen. But the risky areas are going to be 10 feet and less, right? So one of the best things you can do to make your yard a safe haven and to be able to relax comfortably in your backyard is to just keep it tidy, right? These people have a really tidy backyard. You could go into that. I could roll around on that grass all day long. I wouldn't get a single tick. Now, if you look really closely at that swing set, I think that these people really must hate their children, because that swing set is all up in Tick City. It's about 10 feet from the forest edge, and those kids are going to be playing all up and around where the ticks are going to reside. So if I was a responsible parent, I would move that swing set much, much further out, more than 10 feet from that forest edge. What is the impact of invasive plants? Some of these non-native plants like Japanese barberry. Sometimes gardeners bring this up. Now, this is what they're talking about when they're talking about ticks being associated with Japanese barberry. These large swaths of these invasive plants. They're not talking about a single bush or a single shrub in your yard. And so that's basically the long and the short of it. There's been this push, this trend towards leaving the leaves. And I know that avid gardeners and conservationists, they do talk about leaving the leaves, and leaving the leaves in your yard in the fall. It does support a variety of different types of organisms, anything from fireflies to woolly bear caterpillars. They all love being underneath these leaves. And when you rake that up and you destroy that, you're destroying the habitat for a lot of these organisms. Unfortunately, these leaves are also habitats for ticks. So it's one thing, it's going to be a personal choice that you guys decide on your own. If you have small children, maybe it's a sacrifice that you sacrifice leaving the leaves for a few years until your kids are older. And then once your kids are older and are able to do tick checks and things like that, that you then go back to leaving the leaves. But again, it's going to be a personal decision. And the leaves that we've learned are actually critical for tick survival over the wintertime. These things called tick tubes, a lot of times people think that these are keeping them safe. Here's a set of 5 studies showing data is all over the place. And these percentages are reductions. So in that first study, you had a 97% reduction. In the next two, in 1991, you saw increases in tick populations. They weren't significant, but it essentially means these tick tubes did zilch. They did absolutely nothing to protect these people. And those two studies that came shortly after in 1991, right? They were done on a much larger scale than the one in 1988. They were done over multiple states over multiple years. So I've got a lot more faith in the data that came out in those studies. Since then, you had one other study in 1991 where they showed some reductions on some conservation land. And then in 2019, that's the most recent one, they showed a very meager reduction of about a quarter, right? Not nearly enough to keep you safe. But if this is something that helps you sleep at night, then, perhaps it's something you want to do. I, for one, am not going to invest any money or any energy in something that I think is essentially snake oil. What about a tick season? I saw on WCVB Channel 5 that they're talking about an early start to tick season. Here's what I have to say about tick season. Your dog ticks and your Lone Star ticks, they start coming out right about now, April, and they'll kind of last until about July. Deer ticks, they're active all year long. There is no tick season. There's no tick season for deer ticks. So if you're talking about just two ticks, yeah, sure, maybe there's a tick season. But if you're talking about deer ticks, they don't go away, right? Deer ticks are well adapted to cold weather. They've got this 2-year life cycle. They produce glycerol, which is antifreeze, and they're active anytime temperatures are above 32 degrees Fahrenheit, anytime temperatures are above freezing. They tend to be much more active above 40 degrees, but you can head out there and on a day in January, or let's go more extreme. Let's say it's the day after Christmas. You can go out there and you can get deer ticks. You can get Lyme disease the day after Christmas because deer ticks are going to be around. They don't go away. So let's talk about something that is kind of a hot button topic. This is something that's kind of controversial, chemical yard sprays. There's two ways to do this. And this is going to be a personal decision. I know that there's some people that are vehemently opposed to doing anything chemical in their yard, kind of like leaving the leaves. It's going to be a personal choice, right? But then there are other people that they want every tool available, anything they can do to protect themselves against ticks. They want all those tools at their disposal. And this is what I'm here to do, regardless of my own personal beliefs, my own personal opinions on these. I'm here to give you guys tools that are reliable, and a chemical yard spray is a reliable tool that you have at your disposal. If you hire someone, it'll cost about $100, $150 for about an acre of land. If you do it yourself, it might cost about $40. So you can save a good chunk of change if you just do it yourself, and it's not actually that difficult. You don't need technical expertise. It's pretty darn simple. And it's largely a homeowner's responsibility. Your mosquito control project or your state is not going to do this. So how do you do it, right? You just spray the outer edge. We just talked about this. Ticks reside in that 10 feet from the forest edge. You're just going to spray that outer edge. And that's it. You don't need to spray anything else. Just that edge. You do 2 sprays, early to mid-May, is the first spray, early to mid-June in the second spray. And if you're hiring someone, make sure they're not charging you for more than 2 sprays, because that's all you need. In my county, I get people tell me, they go, Blake, I signed up for this plan, and he's going to spray 6 times from March until September. And I think that's a steal, safe. There's no cost. And I'm like, you only need 2. Like that's the only thing you need. He's taking you for a ride. And so what some of these people do is that they'll start spraying in April, and then by the time June hits, those nymphal ticks go away. They're not there anymore. And then he'll be like, see, it's because the spray's working and I need to keep doing this. And they'll charge you for another 4 sprays. So be very careful about who you hire to conduct sprays, because they're not all honest. And the charts I have is the reason we're targeting early mid-May and early mid-June is we're targeting that nymph stage, which is the stage that is most closely associated with Lyme disease. And that's what the chart on the right represents, is the onset of Lyme disease. Lyme disease occurs about 3 to 30 days after a tick bite. And you can see that peak, the peak of Lyme disease is about 3 to 30 days after the peak of nymphs. And so it is a tight correlation we have right there. And that's what we're looking to fight against. You want to repeat that spray yearly with a synthetic compound. And that's really important, that it's not an all natural. And this is the kind of results that you will get from repeating it with a synthetic. So why a synthetic, right? The all natural sprays, these organic sprays that we have on the market, are what we call 25B exempt. This means that they don't require any data whatsoever in order to market them. I've got tea right here in my cup, in my mug right now. I could bottle that and I could spray it in your backyard and I could say kills ticks, and that's 100% legal. There's nothing illegal about that. I don't need to prove that it's ever killed ticks. I don't need to show any data on that. That's what these all natural sprays are about. They don't need to show any data whatsoever on if they work. And some researchers down at University of Rhode Island, they were like, I want to know if these work. And this is the data that you're looking at. The bars show tick survival, right? And so water has pretty high survival, right? You would think that water wouldn't really kill ticks. Well, a Centuria IC3, that's the third one from the left. That one is basically water. And that's a very popular all natural or organic spray. It smells a lot like, kind of like an Italian kitchen when you spray it. It's got a lot of those kind of rosemary, essential oils and things like that. Smells great, doesn't do a thing. And they repeated these with a bunch of other compounds over other years, and they found pretty much the same thing, that the only real things that you can use are synthetics or products that are not even really on the market. So I think, in my opinion, if you're gonna get a yard spray, you either go with a synthetic product or you don't get one at all. So what happens if you're going outside your yard? We talked a lot about yard protection, managing your yard, managing the habitat, yard sprays. That's about the best you can do for managing your yard. And I see sometimes on these, you go on the internet, you go on Facebook or any health department website or extension website, and you see you can avoid them. And to me, that is the most boring recommendation that I'm not gonna do that, right? I climb mountains, I fish, I do all these things. And there are trails that are less than 10 feet from the forest edge. You're walking through Tick City when you walk on this trail. What are you gonna do? Lock yourself in your house? No, you're not gonna do that. So let's start with ways that you can protect yourself and you don't have to worry about quote unquote avoiding them, right? And that starts with using the proper repellents. This is really critical, is using the right ones. And how do you know what the right ones are? You walk into a store, you walk in a place like Walmart, or you go online and you're bombarded by labels, and how do you know what works, right? Throw all that out. Don't look at the rest of the label. Just look at the active ingredient and the percentage. Those are the two most important parts. The tiny words on this bottle are the most important parts about this label, right? This says DEET at 25%. And that's all you need. And here are the active ingredients that you're really looking at. DEET, picaridin or I-carotene, IR3535. And you want those at about 20%. You don't need more. That's it. 100% does not protect better than 20%. So if you're worried about chemical exposure, just use 20%. You're getting maximum protection and you don't need to use any more than that. What about all natural repellents? Well, I kind of have the same opinion. Since they're not regulated, there's no evidence of safety or efficacy. They may be no better than water. However, I will add the caveat, right? I will add this caveat about these repellents, because there are so many out there and you can make your own, that if you formulate them properly, if you use the right stuff, they can provide a limited amount of protection. Sometimes they protect just as well as DEET, but they don't last as long, or vice versa. Sometimes they don't protect as well and they might last a little bit longer. So the effectiveness really varies, and it depends very highly upon getting the right stuff. And again, I don't know anything about this yaya, but what I want to tell you is that that could be a bottle of water sitting in front of me, and that's completely legal. They could charge me $10 or $20 for it, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's morally corrupt, but there's nothing legally incorrect with doing that. Let's talk about our next option. And this, sometimes people are looking for a silver bullet when it comes to protecting against ticks. And there is no silver bullet, but this is about as close as you get. This stuff is called Permethrin. It's not a repellent. It's not the same. It's different. In a lot of ways, it's better, but it's a little bit more confusing to use. And I want to tell you why it's so good and why this is as close as you get to a silver bullet. This is a pair of my pants treated with Permethrin, and this is a deer tick crawling over it. I've got this little video clip to show you, and I want you to watch very closely to that tick's behavior. It's going to lift up its feet like the pants are hot. You see that? And that tick fell off. That tick is dead. That tick will no longer live to bite another day. It's gone. It is dunzos. And so you can treat your clothing, never skin, but clothing and fabrics, I treat my backpacks, gardening gloves, all that kind of stuff. And I can walk through the woods and it's like I'm wearing a suit of armor. It's like ting, 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 ting. It doesn't make that noise, but every time I walk through the woods, I kind of imagine that in my head. And like I said, I conduct tick surveillance and I will pick up ticks on the cloth right next to me, hundreds upon hundreds of ticks on that cloth, not a single tick on my body at the end of the day. This stuff works like a charm. So again, how do you use it? Fabrics only, never skin, applied in advance. This stuff must dry in order for it to be effective and safe, right? It's on the label. If you're going to be using the stuff, make sure you follow that label and it'll tell you all this information. Stuff you buy in the store, like sprays you buy in the store, that stuff lasts 6 washings or 1 month. So even though it requires a little bit of work up front, you benefit for a long time when you use this stuff. Or you can go through a company called Insect Shield and they'll treat your clothes professionally. And that lasts 70 washings. And a recent study showed that it also lasts for about a year. So it's either 70 washings or a year. And so that's kind of the maximum you get from these products. But it's really quite simple. And I want to show you just how simple it is. So this is me at my friend Allison's house and laying down her shoes. I don't wear purple shoes, but she has them. Treating them, you spray them down, follow the label once again. Spray my pants, let it dry, and that is literally it. In the time you guys spent watching this video, you could have treated your shoes and you would be good, protected against ticks for a whole month. It's so easy, so simple. All of that pain, all that suffering, all that waiting at the doctor's office, all of that can be avoided just with this one spray per month. And it's so darn simple. If it's hard for you to remember 1 month or 6 washings or what all the other mumbo jumbo that I said, just treat your shoes the same day every single month. I treat my shoes the first weekend of every month. That's what I do. I just treated my shoes last weekend. And they'll get treated the first weekend of May and the first weekend of June and the first weekend of July. And I just am on this routine. I treat my girlfriend's shoes, and she doesn't even know I treat them. I treat them and she doesn't even know it, and she's protected and I don't have to worry about her coming down with Lyme disease. And again, it's so simple and it's cheap too. You get this product anywhere from Walmart to Amazon. It should cost about $10 to $15 a bottle. I think Target might have it cheapest, REI, Dick's Sporting Goods, they all carry it. The other thing about this is you want to keep cats away until it's dry. Cats do have a sensitivity to it. I did speak with veterinarians when I got this position, and they said as long as it's dry, the cat is fine. It's just a matter of them being exposed to the wet stuff. That's what's really important. Just to give you an idea of what this stuff is, the stuff that you apply topically to your dog, the stuff like Canine Advantix 2 that you would apply the back of your neck of a dog, that can be up to 50% permethrin, right? And you have your cat around your dog all the time, right? But they're getting the 50% permethrin on the back of the dog's neck. The stuff you spray on the outside of your clothes, 0.5%. So the stuff on a dog is 100 times more potent than you would apply on the outside of your shoes and pants. I mean, that's going directly on your dog's neck, right? And so this stuff is a very low dose, very low concentration. But I just want to caution, I'm a cautious person. I always err on the side of caution. And I love cats. I'm a cat person. So I would hate for any cats to get hurt in the process of people protecting themselves against ticks. So I bring up this message just in case. Treatments for cats and dogs. Big thing, speak with your veterinarian. They know your animal much better than I do. I focus more on protecting humans from ticks, not so much dogs and cats. But I do want to make you aware of counterfeit products that have been circulating. These have been circulating on sites like Amazon, for instance, people buying Seresto collars on Amazon, thinking that it's the collar it's poisoning their dog. And they blame it on the brand, or they blame it on the fact that they think that the collars are just bad. But they don't realize that they're getting these counterfeit products through these sites that they thought they could rely on. And the thing is, places like Amazon, they fulfill their orders through third-party suppliers. And so you could be getting a product that is, again, not regulated and is counterfeit. So I recommend that you always go through your vet or go through a vet trusted site. Again, it's worth the extra money to do so. I love my cat. I'm sure that you guys all love your animals. And so you just want to keep them as safe as possible. Follow everything up with tick checks. I check myself every night. It's one of those things where if I ever got Lyme disease, I feel like all my credibility would go out the window. So checking myself, super, super important. From the data, we have not actually observed Lyme disease being transmitted in less than 24 hours. I'm not a firm believer of that, but that's just the data that we have on hand. But we do know that transmission of many diseases it takes a long time. So checking yourself for ticks, a very important safety net. Ticks are masters of self. Don't rely on yourself feeling a tick before you notice it. In this first study, 90% of people who had Lyme disease did not remove the nymph tick in less than 24 hours. That critical point, right? And then in the second study in 2019, and this was done with children, over 81% of children who had Lyme disease never remember being bit. That's telling me that, so a tick can be on your body anywhere from 4 to 7 days. So that tick was, you're telling me, so this tick was on a child for 4 to 7 days, and neither the parents nor the child ever saw the tick. So it's telling me people aren't looking for these things. They're not paying enough attention. And I know people love their children. I'm not going to bring that into question, but one of the ways that you can be a really great parent is by checking your children. How do what do you check? Some of these diagrams are so confusing. Don't pay attention to any of them. Just check your whole body. There's not a single place on your body that tick cannot bite. And that includes all the places that I'm not going to mention right now because they're not safe for work, right? Just check everything. I check, I have a mirror, I do it right before the shower, check my body before the shower, and call it a done deal. What if you get bit? So you, let's say you're out in the woods, you forgot to wear Permethrin, you forgot your repellents, and you fell asleep without doing it. You did all the things I told you not to do, and then you somehow realized that you had a tick on you. What happens in that case? Well, I'm not going to get mad. What I'm going to tell you is there are things that all hope is not lost, right? There are things you can do that still keep the balls in your court, that still give you a lot of control over the situation. Remove the tick properly, pair of tweezers, firmly grasp it, pull straight up. Don't use matches, gasoline, nail polish remover. The reason behind this is some of those will get the tick off, but we don't know exactly what that does. There is this thought that the tick regurgitates inside your body, and as disgusting as that sounds, it might also enhance disease transmission. So you're kind of biting off your nose to spite your face, right? You're getting the tick off, but you're enhancing disease transmission, and we don't want that to happen. So removing the tick with a pair of tweezers, it's simple, it's easy. You just grasp it, you pull straight up. If the head breaks off, don't worry about it. A lot of times people say, what about the head? You got to dig it out. That's what the head of a tick looks like. And it's not even the true head. It's actually just the mouth of the tick. It's basically a straw that the tick uses to drink blood. If that breaks off, the risk of disease transmission stops at that point. So once you break off the rest of the body, if that tiny spiked end that is covered in these barbs and coated in cement, if that breaks off into your skin, just apply some Neosporin or some antiseptic or something like that to clean up the site of the bite, and just let your body work its way out like a splinter, because that's essentially, it's an inert object at that point. It's not going to continually transmit Lyme disease or anything like that. Don't Google symptoms. All the symptoms are very general and nondescript. Things like fatigue, headache, nausea. I mean, I feel like that every single morning. Maybe you guys feel like that after I've been screaming at you for an hour. Google's going to tell you a ton of stuff. And I know everyone's kind of sick of COVID at this point, but these are all the symptoms that COVID and Lyme disease overlap with. I mean, how are you ever going to know, right? You're going to think you have everything. You're going to be like, you're going to go to your doctor. You're going to be like, I Googled it. I have COVID. I have Lyme disease. I have babesiosis. I have antibiotics. And your doctor is going to go, whoa, stop right there. And kind of on that note, let's talk about what you can do when you go to visit your doctor. Sometimes people say, they come up to me and they're like, Blake, I had Lyme disease and my doctor didn't even know. And they think that the doctors have something against them or they're out to get them. But I'm here to tell you that they're not. They're people, right? And the more information you can give your doctor, the better they're going to be able to help you. So it's like, help me help you, right? And so that starts on your end by gathering some data, gathering information about the circumstances around the tick, about the circumstances around the bite, right? So let's say you're bitten, sure. Save the tick. put it in a plastic bag, stick it between two pieces of Scotch tape, do whatever you want to do. Just make sure you save it and write the date on that article, right? Write the date on the bag or something like that, because we know that the symptoms of Lyme and the Lyme disease, the onset of that is about 3 to 30 days from the time of a bite, on average about 10 to 14 days, really about 2 weeks. So that's really significant. If you go to your doctor's office and you that way you don't have to try to remember the time that you were bit or the identity of the tick or the feeding status. You have that right there to show your doctor. You say, look, doc, I was bit by a deer tick 10 days ago, and I have a headache and I'm tired and I'm nauseous. And your doctor is going to be like, well, that all lines up now. And that makes my job much easier. That's all this information, instead of you showing up and being like, I don't know, I was at a convention. Now your doctor's like, well, could it be COVID? Could it be all these other things? And so helping your doctor is hugely beneficial to you and them. Get the tick identified. You know, we went over this. Different diseases are associated with different species of tick. Was it a fed or a flat tick? You know, how long was the tick attached to your body? You don't need to know all this, guys, because you have a resource right here through the University of Rhode Island. It's called Tick Spotters. Pretty much 24 hours a day. You can log on. You can submit a photo to them. They'll identify the species. They may even tell you how long it's fed, and they do all of that for free. And that's all right there. They do it as a data collection tool, but they're pretty darn accurate, actually. They published a study where they showed that they were pretty accurate. Not 100%, but mostly accurate. You can get the tick tested. So this is not something that you should ever use for a medical diagnosis, right? It's not like you can get the tick tested and say, well, the tick had Lyme disease, so I probably have Lyme disease. You can't do that. The benefit of the tick testing, in addition to finding rare pathogens like that Heartland virus that was found in New York, is that it can tell you a lot about co-infection and things like that going on. So this was a woman in my county, Plymouth County. She's 79 years old. The tick was attached to her. That tick came back positive for the agent, the germs that cause Lyme disease and the germs that cause babesiosis. At this woman's age, an undiagnosed case of babesiosis could be fatal, right? Let's say this woman goes traveling outside the state. She goes to maybe Arizona, where they don't even know about babesiosis, right? And she starts feeling sick, right? She starts feeling like really, really sick. And she goes to her doctor's office. Now she can go to the doctor's office with this thing in hand and say, I was bit by a tick. It was carrying these pathogens. And her doctor can be like, okay, now this is on my radar. He goes, it doesn't mean you have it. It doesn't mean you don't have it, but now it's on my radar, and that's important information. If you have any rashes, photograph the bite. The rash that's associated with Lyme disease is called erythema migrans. It looks really weird and looks very different from case to case to case. So take a picture, take as many pictures as you want of it, and then you have photographic evidence. I had one guy come up to me, he said he had that and then it went away. He went to his doctor and he told his doctor he had it. His doctor didn't believe him. And he's like, but I had it. Again, a picture is worth 1,000 words. If I tell you I caught the biggest trout you've ever seen, you're not going to believe it unless I show you a picture of it. And same thing with these bullseye rashes. Take pictures, bring them to your doctor's office, show your doctor. Let them make the decision. And lastly, I want to end with, when are you safe? When can you really kind of stop worrying about ticks? I'm always aware of ticks, even in the winter. But when there's a layer of snow on the ground, this is the point where you're never really going to find ticks. And so the bottom line here is, with the right knowledge and awareness, tick-borne diseases are preventable. And at this point, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was really informative and interesting and engaging. So we really appreciate that. I am going to, we did not have many questions come in from the chat, so feel free to enter them now. But I will read one that I have. Well, the first one is, someone did ask for that website. So I did want to say thank you for talking about tick testing. As Jen Murphy mentioned in the beginning, we do have generous funding from Winchester Hospital. So if you go on our website, winchester.us/ticks, you can link right there to the Tick Reports website. You put in a coupon code WINHOSP and you will get a very reduced rate to test your tick, which can be very helpful, as Blake said, and informative. So the question that I had was, someone woke up to a burrowing deer tick in the middle of the night last year. They used tweezers. They had a really hard time removing it. What do you think about those tick tools? I know I've seen the tick spoons. So do you have any thoughts on that, Blake?
Okay, so again, the best way to remove a tick is with a pair of tweezers. I know sometimes what can happen is your skin around the bite. So when a tick goes to feed on you, it's going to inject a lot of different things into your body. The tick's saliva, the tick's spit is filled with all these pharmacologically active things, and it fluctuates all the time. And some people can have these reactions in their skin, and their skin will swell up almost over the tick. And at that point, it can be actually really hard to use a pair of tweezers to get that tick out. But a tweezers is still one of the better things that you should try to use. The tick tools like the tick twister or the tick key, those tend to work much better on the adult stage ticks. On the nymph ticks, the ones that are about the size of a poppy seed, it can be very difficult to try to use those on those ticks. I do still have some of those tools around because I have nieces over, I have people who bring their dogs over, and using a pair of tweezers around a little kid or a dog, it can be kind of a scary situation. And so having a tick key, which is a very specialized tool, using that around on a dog or a kid that's playing, where you can just I changed my niece's diapers, right? She doesn't even sit still for a diaper change. I can imagine pulling off a tick off her body. It's going to be really hard. So some of those tools can be very useful for those types of situations. And I think in your particular case, waking up in the night, I would give it a shot, see if it helps. Just don't use the Vaseline or the nail polish remover or any of these other things. And the tick removal tools, they could work, and they might be more helpful than a pair of tweezers.
Great. And a question came in about, what is the brand of permethrin that you spray your clothing with?
Okay, so and I also had people ask me to spell out the permethrin, and I spelled that out in chat. The brand that I use is called Sawyer, kind of like Tom Sawyer. It comes in a yellow bottle. And the reason I use this product is it's not that it's better. If you go into a store, any product you get, because it's EPA registered, it means you're going to get the same stuff pretty much from bottle to brand to bottle to brand. It's all going to work the same. And the difference is that Sawyer makes a product that is water-based in a pump sprayer, almost like a Windex bottle, that you can spray in your clothes. And I find that's just much easier to apply. So the delivery system that brand makes is better. And because I'm not a fan of the aerosol sprays, they also make an aerosol spray, and I've used that. It's not great. It's just like all the other aerosol sprays. But the pump spray is nice because you get good coverage. The product goes exactly where you want it to go. And especially on a windy day, it can be nice. And so that's the brand that I use. If there's another brand that makes another pump spray, I would see no reason not to get that. If there's a price difference, just go with the cheaper one. They're all going to work the same.
Great. And someone made a comment that actually they did get a tick bite in the snow a few years ago, and they think that there might have been corn stalks hosting the ticks. So just wanted to.
Yeah. So, I mean, there you go. There you go. I mean, it's a year-long thing. I had another question come through. One person said, I use off, is that effective? Depends on, remember, the brand doesn't matter. It's the active ingredient. So if off, and I know off, it usually comes with DEET. It's usually a DEET product, in the percentage of that. So if it's a 7% DEET or a low percentage of DEET, it's not going to be all that effective. If it's a higher percentage, closer to 20%, it's going to be much more effective. And so whether or not something is effective is really going to depend on that active ingredient and the percentage. Someone's asking, is the permethrin safe for toddlers' clothing too? This product has been approved safe for infants, toddlers, children, pregnant women, nursing mothers, pretty much everyone. Right? There's really no one. But I do want to I do want to add a disclaimer in that I have heard some doctors kind of caution away from using it on young children, just because it can cause like maybe some skin irritation or something like that. It's not going to really do a lot of harm to them. Again, it's a low percentage on the outside of their clothes. Lice shampoo, the stuff that you put on, if kids come home with lice, that's about 10% permethrin. This is 0.5% on the outside of their clothes. So much, much less concentrated, but still, like I'm a cautious guy. I like to be very cautious. So outside, I would kind of hesitate on that. If you're just treating their shoes, I'd say that's fine. I would definitely do that.
Great. I don't see any more questions, so I'll give people another minute in case anyone wants to add anything else, question or comment. I'm sending in the chat to everyone that winchester.us/ticks, and we will post a link to this recording there. So for any of your friends or family who missed it, they can go ahead and see it. And I do see another question. It's a good one. They find it hard to look for ticks on their scalp. So any suggestions on that?
This one actually came through. I actually came onto this by Larry. Use your fingertips. So places that you can't check, like I have a kind of a handy mirror for checking the back of my neck too, but places that you can't see very readily, use your fingertips because you will be able to feel it. It's going to feel different. And as weird as it sounds, I know exactly what the top of my head feels like in the back of my neck. So if any new bumps show up, well, I'm going to have someone take a second look at that. I'm going to ask someone to take another look at that because that could be, it could be just a pimple or like a whitehead, or it could be, maybe a new mole or something like that. But it could also be a tick. And so that's really, it's a good idea to just use your fingertips and check that way. But ticks, they're going to feel different than like a scab or something like that. They're going to feel different. Something's going to feel off about it.
Great. Well, thank you. That's very helpful. And just a plug for June 4th on Town Day. We do have someone from Tick Report who's going to be on site helping to do tick education and some hands-on things. And then in the fall, the Winchester Health Department will be at a farmer's market, the dates to be determined. And we're looking, in the past, we have handed out, I think actually Larry was one who told us about it, shower cards. So they're waterproof cards that give you the step-by-step what to do to check for ticks and the way they look like. So we passed those out a couple of years ago. They were a big hit. So we are looking to get more of those in people's hands for the fall. And lastly, if you have elementary school students, we're looking to send home some tick identification cards and some more information in their backpacks. So thank you all. You can be in touch directly with the health department if you have additional questions. And Blake, thank you again. That was really an incredible and informative presentation.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
And Jen, I think is gonna say one more thing here. Oh,
no, I just want to say
yeah.
Thank you very much. It was very informative. I really enjoyed that and learned a lot. Thanks.
And we got some nice comments. So thank you everyone for being here tonight, and have a good rest of your evening.